What's up, YouTube? This is True Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, shout out to the man, the brother Aaron, for showing love once again with the donation to the channel via the PayPal. And basically, his question to me was, why do people put Nikola Jokic on the pedestal that they do? He was saying that, he's seen guys who in the past have achieved so much more with less. He brought up Allen Iverson. But he specifically said he doesn't see how anybody thinks that Nikola Jokic is the reincarnation of Larry Bird. Larry Bird was a different animal, and I agree wholeheartedly. The only thing that Nikola Jokic has in common with Larry Bird is, let's be honest, they're white. And that's just something that happens. I've noticed that ever since, Dino Radja, back in the mid-'90s, it seems like the media has this weird infatuation of making every flash in the pan non-black player the next Larry Bird, whether it was Dino Radja, whether it's Keith Van Horn, whether it's Adam Morrison, whether it's, now, Nikola Jokic, and then it's going to be Cooper Flagg. There's been others too, Jimmy Fredette. You know him. It's just always, man, it's sickening. Look, the only thing I think that Jokic has over Bird is size. You could argue that he might be better at running the offense or running an offense, although Bird, I think, is in Jokic's league when it comes to passing ability. But Bird trumps him in so many different categories. When it comes to rebounding, they're close. Jokic has a little bit better numbers, but Jokic is bigger than Larry Bird. He's bigger. Jokic is 6'11", 280, or so, 285. Bird was 6'9", 230. But Bird was a prodigious rebounder for his size, averaging 10 rebounds per game. And earlier in his career, when he was playing power forward, he was averaging closer to 11 rebounds per game. And that's with having Robert Parrish as a center getting 11, 12 rebounds himself a game. And later on, Kevin McHale. So they're on par with each other rebounding. Bird was far better playing off the ball. Bird was better as far as, to me, ball handling, although he wasn't flashy, but he was better at ball handling. Bird was a very underrated defender. I think Bird's on 3 all-defensive second teams. So Jokic, as we know, is one of the worst defensive so-called great big men we've ever seen. but he gets excuses for that. He gets all these excuses. And I think, and many of us think, that if you put Jokic in the 1990s, where the floor isn't as spread out with three-point shooting, Jokic's glaring weakness as far as defensive abilities will be more exposed. With more guys attacking him, going to the basket, and we will see Jokic's lack of mobility. Hell, you can make an argument that George Mikan in his prime had more mobility than Nikola Jokic. If I'm not mistaken, there was a stat. Now, maybe the numbers shifted a little bit, but at one point this season, opponents were shooting 69% around the rim when attacking Nikola Jokic. 69%. That means they was converting virtually 7 out of 10 field goal attempts around Jokic. But then you want to have this discussion about Jokic being some undervalued, really good defender just because he happens to be amongst the leaders in steals. Magic Johnson led the league in steals twice. That mean that Magic Johnson was his lockdown defender? Bruce Bowen was never nowhere near amongst the steals leaders. You going to tell me Bruce Bowen was a good defender? James Harden has, I believe, led the league in steals, or at least been amongst the leaders. I think he did lead the league in steals one year. We know James Harden's a poor defender, so steals are not a good indicator, and they've never been historically a good indicator. Now, there have been some great defenders who have led the league in steals: Michael Jordan, John Stockton, Gary Payton, but it doesn't mean that you're a good defender or a great defender. Chris Paul's led the NBA in steals a record 6 times, but Chris Paul's now a lockdown defender. So, like I said, that's bullshit. That's poppycock that steals means that you're a great defender. But no, Jokic is not on Larry Bird's level. And I'm going to tell you another thing Larry Bird never would have done. Larry Bird would have never, ever said out of his mouth, basically the problem is the team. Because that's what he said in his exit interview when they were eliminated by OKC. He basically said, I don't get into the ifs. If we didn't win, that means the team wasn't good enough. Now, that to me indicates that he's kind of making excuses. Because you didn't lose to a first round team. You lost to the Thunder, a team that won 68 games. It won 7 games. You guys have given them more of a test than any other team so far. Because if this conference finals, if it goes the way it looks, this might be over in 4 or 5. So no, the Nuggets are a good enough team. You underperformed. Jokic, you underperformed. You've had maybe 4 good games this postseason, a bunch of mediocre performances, and 3 shit waters, as James would put it. So 2 or 3 shit waters. So you've been less than an MVP this postseason. Shea started off terrible, but he's been pouring it on as of late. So you got Scap Attack and all these other clowns, closet, sheet wearers, all talking about, Shea stole Jokic's MVP. It's just amazing because these are the same guys that you can crap on LeBron James and his fans for always making excuses, always making it about stats and crying about him not having enough help. And here they're doing the same thing. doing the same thing. I don't want to hear this shit. I don't want to hear none of it. Because when Giannis was going through injury issues, all I heard from these same people was, well, Giannis got to get healthy, or Giannis got to fight through it, or he got to figure it out. He's supposed to figure it out even if Chris Middleton's injured, even if Drew Holiday was hobbled, even if some other guy or a couple other players were just absolutely forgetting how to shoot the basketball. I literally saw guys on the Milwaukee Bucks choking, and nobody gave a fuck. But I'm supposed to care about? No. We're not going to do that. We're just not going to do that. We're not. We're not going to make any excuses. At the end of the day, there was one year where the Milwaukee Bucks swept the Boston Celtics 4-0. I think it was 1982. So if it was 1982, I can't remember if it was 82, 83. I think it was, I'm trying to think, was it 82 or 83? One of those, I think it was 83. One of those years, the Milwaukee Bucks swept the Boston Celtics. I think it was in the semifinals, right? That doesn't mean that the Boston Celtics were just not good. It just means that the Milwaukee Bucks, that particular year, were playing on another level. The Thunder are playing on a championship level. It's the challenge is for Jokic to come back better than ever, not be so concerned about stats, but improving your game. Get in better shape. You know what I'm saying? Maybe, just maybe, Denver needs to practice more. Because I heard these teams rarely practice. The Thunder like a team that actually practices. A lot of these guys live these, you know what I'm saying, these charmed lives with these beautiful women. And, Jokic, he comes across to me as a guy that stays to himself, and basketball's a 9 to 5. After that, he punches out, don't want to do a basketball, just, all he want to do is ride his horses and live on his farm. Well, you know what? That's cool and everything. But maybe you need to be more passionate about basketball. Maybe you need to be more of a leader. You know what I'm saying? All these things that all these other great players did, maybe you need to give a fuck. Because it's like your fans care more about your legacy or about you winning or your place in history than you do. You took 9 field goal attempts in Game 7. 9. A Game 7, you took 9 field goal attempts. Yeah, Michael Porter Jr. played like shit throughout much of these playoffs. But you know what? I remember a finals. I think it was the last finals. Scottie Pippen played like shit for much of that series. Steve Kerr struggled with his shot. And that wasn't an excuse for the Bulls to lose. Michael Jordan did whatever the fuck he had to do. If the offense was breaking down, Michael Jordan took over. Nikola Jokic was supposed to be this all-time great player. He needed to take over in Game 7. But he didn't because he couldn't. So I don't want to hear that shit, man. Larry Bird was on another level. Larry Bird was a leader. Larry Bird is one of the great trash talkers. He got in guys' heads psychologically. And Larry Bird, when healthy at least, was the best player in basketball in his prime. He was the best player. And he went up against real competition at his position. See, Jokic only has Joel Embiid, who's been injured for most of this year. Anthony Davis, who's been injured for much of this year. Other than that, who's really a center? Who's really out there? Giannis is a power forward. Whereas Larry Bird was, he had guys like Dominique Wilkins, James Worthy, Adrian Dantley, Alex English, Bernard King. Those are guys that just come to mind. Those are the top guys. You had Mark Aguirre. You know what I'm saying? He had actual Hall of Fame small forwards. And then earlier in his career, like I said, he was a power forward. But he had these guys to contend on a nightly basis, contend against. And he still was the best. Julius Erving, Xavier McDaniel. He went up against real competition at his position. So, no, he's not. Jokic is, to me, is bullshit. And it's just, and let me say this in closing, man. It's so amazing to me. It's amazing to me how these guys are more upset about an MVP than this guy winning more titles. They're more concerned about individual. I'll tell you, man, Jokic is starting to turn to the Aaron Rodgers of the NBA. He's going to have all these MVPs and one title and never will go back again. And even that title run is dubious. You know what I'm saying? Bird was going up against, in the finals, Moses Malone and the Rockets, or, you know what I'm saying, Akeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson and the Rockets, or the Showtime Lakers. This nigga went up against Jimmy Buckets and an ace-seeded Miami Heat team and still dropped the game, if I'm not mistaken. Come on, man. You up against an ace seed in the finals. Fuck out of here, man.